More abundant, more love, more joy, everything.
It's inspired young people.
Inspiration comes from within you. When you clear out the garbage that's in your mind, you then create space for something better, more beautiful to come in.
Let's have life and have it more abundantly.
I say yes.
It's like taking a workshop. I get to be in my pajamas.
We have a very active imagination, which is why it's important to learn how to harness it and then point it in the direction you want to go.
I listen to your show every day.
It's time now for Living Your Inspired Life with Susan Burrell. Susan is no-nonsense, inspirational, motivational, and fun.
This is positive talk radio.
Practical wisdom for everyday life.
It's a gift you give yourself.
Now, here's Susan.
And welcome to Living Your Inspired Life. You're listening to News Talk 1590 KVTA, and we're here every week to bring you something that's positive, something that is profound, and something that's provoking, thought-provoking. So if you've missed anything up until this time, I invite you to go to livingyourinspiredlife.org and tune in and tune up and develop your power perspective. Now I can talk. I've been practicing all my life. Anyway, livingyourinspiredlife.org and get caught up. Today, I'm really just so happy to have this woman on the show, joining me on the show. She's written a book, and it is called Unearthing Venus, My Search for the Woman Within, and it's a memoir. So I want to welcome Cate Montana. Cate, thank you for joining us.
Hi, Susan. What a pleasure to be on the show.
As I said to you just before we came on air, the title alone caught my attention, Unearthing Venus, My Search for the Woman Within. But then it took me a while. I didn't realize it was a memoir until I started reading it. I was like, oh, this is a really fun, I have to tell everybody, it's a really fun read. It's a very, very interesting read. And you give a lot of kind of, through the events in your life, you also provide historical perspective, and I just love that. Let me talk about you a little bit, Cate, so everybody knows a bit of who you are. So Cate is the woman that broke the gender barrier in network television by becoming an editor for Monday Night Football, which meant in those days, sorry, Cate, in those days, it was about, you were the one that learned how to do instant replay and slow motion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And put all that together, and you freelanced for all the major networks like ABC, NBC, CNN, ESPN, CBS. I think I've hit them all, yeah?
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty much, and worked in radio and newspapers and marketing and all that stuff. So your life has been completely eclectic. But the thing that really got me at the beginning, and then I read your book, and I'm even more enchanted with you, is the thing about being a woman in a man's world and doing it at the beginning of the entire, or maybe in the middle of it, the feminist movement. You took on challenges that most women could never have even gotten their big toe in.
You know, I've lived a very serendipitous life, but then I really look at it and go, wow, you know, the more I look back at the patterns, it seems like there really is a design to things.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in communications in one form or another, whether it was TV or as working as a journalist or in radio, all of my life. And what a wake-up call at age about 58 to realize, well, let me put this in context. I was so liberated, Susan, that I was liberated enough to completely ignore the whole feminist movement. Really. I thought, what the heck does this have to do with me? Come on, ladies, get together. Don't you realize we can do anything we want? And so I was really busy out there living the freedom that my mother and my mother's mother and all these generations of women couldn't even have dreamed of opportunity-wise. So imagine my shock when at age 58 I'm cruising along and realized through a conversation and interview I was doing with a South American shaman for a newspaper article that I was really liberated to work like a guy.
Oh,
I'd been liberated to operate as a guy in a guy's world, and that there really hadn't been any opportunity for me to play in the feminine arena or even really understand what the feminine entailed, aside from a lot of preset biases and stereotypes I had in my mind, which I had, of course, garnered by living in a very masculine society.
Well, and it's so I appreciate you saying that, because I've been having conversations with students and clients lately, this last year especially, and most of them are women, about the shift that's occurring in consciousness, if you will, and that it is really, something has so dramatically changed in a very subtle way, and everybody's wondering why the old ways don't work, and we're having the conversation is because it's the old paradigm, and I would say it's a patriarchal paradigm. It just doesn't function anymore. There's a whole new paradigm that hasn't been fully lived yet, that is trying to find its footing.
Oh, absolutely. And it is a patriarchal paradigm, and I'm always fascinated how we always kind of, in a politically correct way, shuffle our feet and go, oh, well, I really shouldn't call it that, but yeah, that's freaking what it is.
Yeah.
And what we haven't lived yet, Susan, is a social paradigm that is a balance of both masculine and feminine values. We haven't lived a balanced existence. I think we went from the ancient days of the goddess religions and the more gestalt, unlinear, nonlinear, emotional way of life into, wow, the development of the left brain function. And then the masculine paradigm came into power. And so we've gone from one side of the boat to the next side of the boat, when what we need to do is actually operate from both sides, from both hemispheres of our brain, and operate as both, as holistic human beings with feminine attributes and masculine attributes. But, first we've got to get out of this really, really polarized mindset that is so polarized we don't even see that we're only hitting on, the left side of the brain and the whole masculine way of living and thinking and acting. We're so enculturated into a masculine mindset social model that we don't even see what we're missing. We don't even know we're missing something, except for this, really gnawing sense inside of our souls and hearts, and that something's terribly unbalanced and really, really freaking wrong with our society. But then we scratch our heads and go, well, I don't know what it is, and that's why it was such a shocking wake-up call for me to suddenly realize that, oh my God, the reason I've been floundering around feeling so unbalanced and out of control and fundamentally unhappy and unfulfilled in my life is that I was kind of like a car. If you got a 4-cylinder car, it'll run on 2 cylinders.
Right.
But it won't run well.
Right.
Or happily. And I realized I was a 4-cylinder car hitting on 2 cylinders. And so my whole book, Unearthing Venus, took off from that one conversation I had with this South American shaman when he introduced me to a whole different way of gender balance and men and women living and operating together, when he talked about his own tribe down in South America. And that's what started my whole investigation to find out what I was missing in my modern Western culture.
Well, and having grown up as a woman in the modern Western culture, I think I can kind of say this for everybody. We tend to think, men and women in this culture tend to think that we have it figured out.
Oh, yeah.
We got it all wired. We're the most whatever nation in the world and all that stuff. And then, as you're describing in your book, that there's other cultures out there that are balanced. They're balanced. I was like, yeah, that's right. That's right. I had to remind myself, that's right. There, the Western culture is not the be-all, end-all way of life.
No, and what's fascinating, Susan, is what you just said about we think we have all the answers. Well, that is a very masculine dynamic. Masculine, the yang, is about structure. It's about having answers. It's all about left brain functioning. It's about the intellect, intelligence, the gathering of facts, the creation of systems, so that we can operate in the world and live and do well. And it works to a degree without any other input from the feminine side of things, which is totally unstructured, which is about intuitive processes and the messiness and the inconclusiveness and the uncertainty of life, which, being human beings, mystery is great if it's a novel, but God, it's really freaky and scary if you don't know what you're dealing with. And so it's a lot easier to set up systems and ideas and call it fact and true, and this is how life is. And, so you can go, whew, I don't have to worry about any of that kind of crazy, uncertain stuff about what life is and who I am and what we're really about. No, I can just think I know what it is and handle life that way. But,
Right.
It leaves us pretty empty.
Well, and there's so many people I think that are very, I want to say tight-minded. When you were describing that, it just feels very tight-minded, that there's not a lot of open thinking. There's not with the feminine side, and I'm not talking about the woman side, but I'm talking about the feminine power energy side, right? That is also, besides you're saying it's very messy and non-structured, it's also very inclusive. Because everybody can be in the room making a mess, and it doesn't matter.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what color you are, what sex you are, what preference you have. Everybody can do the free-flowing thing, and it's all okay. And I think that's the precipice we are on right now, is moving from that tight-minded or closed-minded place, if you will, to this more open and fluid way of being and thinking that needs to be practiced again, because it's just been so long, and especially in our culture.
Absolutely. One of the things that I really think that in my mind, the most important thing we can do as a culture, as men and women, is to start getting beyond the really grotesquely limited stereotypes we have about masculine and feminine. When I use the word feminine, it's like instantaneously, because we're, the way the brain works for a human being is it's all associative. So we have instantaneous associations with everything. And when I say the word feminine, for decades, and still, I swear to God, this is almost embarrassing, when you say the word feminine, and when I even utter it, there's still something in me that goes, pink, lace, cat shoes, ballet, and it's just like, it's frightening. But it's also just normal. So what I really love is expanding this conversation to get into a qualitative understanding about the sexes. Let's, the obvious physical differences, the polarized male, the polarized female, and how we fit together on a physical level. That's all very obvious. And then we have the stereotypical ideas about the he-man and the muscle man and the femme fatale and all of those, which are these stereotypical descriptions of masculine and feminine. But there's so much more to us. And I think what we're really struggling with right now is this need to get into qualities and values that typify masculine and feminine polarities as archetypes.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, masculine and feminine is actually an archetypal system of organization. The way the world is structured in mass is it's predicated on polarity, electromagnetic polarity, positive and negative.
Right.
I mean, when the Big Bang happened, within less than 1 second, one of the first things that happened is we had polarity. We had electrons and positrons pop into existence. That's less than 1 second after the Big Bang occurred. So the whole foundation of our creation is based in polarity. And so man and woman are just expressions of that. So when I use the word feminine and I use the word masculine, it's about patterns describing this natural polarized electromagnetic state of matter creation in the world. And so it's so cool to expand our definition of man and woman to go into this qualitative realm, because then we're hugely enlarging our picture about who we are and our understanding. And so are you familiar with the Taoist Chinese system of thought?
I am vaguely familiar, but why don't you explain it so that our listeners really get it?
Absolutely. The Taoist system, amongst many, many other things, has this understanding of the foundation of polarity as the foundation of creation. And they see the feminine, they call it the yin, and the masculine they call yang. So yin and yang. And pretty much everybody has seen the symbol. It's in a circle, and it's the black area chasing the white area in this endless loop. Well, it's about balance because these are complementary forces. Masculine and feminine are qualitative forces that balance one another, and you can't have one without the other. So the yin qualities, or the feminine qualities, are found in all of nature, and so are yang qualities. But some things are more yang, and some things are more yin. For example, here I'll list some of the yin qualities, and then I'll cite the yang qualities. Yin, feminine, is nurturing. The masculine yang side of that is protecting.
Right.
The yin is multidimensional, multitasking. The yang is single task, target, goal-oriented. The feminine, yin, intuitive, masculine, intellectual. Feminine, holistic. Masculine, linear. Feminine, other, community-oriented. Masculine, self-oriented. Women are process-oriented. Masculine is goal-oriented. Women are responsive. Men tend to be reactive. The feminine is yielding, relational, pliable. The masculine is rigid, focused, and separate and objective. So these are complementary opposites that are necessary for all of life to exist. The yin is not better than the yang, or vice versa. But what we've come to experience in our lives as human beings is, we're living in this very masculine, polarized reality, where we've been educated in masculine educational systems to be structured, linear, left-brain logic dependent, and all things that are yin, these feminine qualities, because we've been living in a strongly masculine environment, have been slowly judged as bad or less than or less effective than the masculine qualities, which have been raised to a pinnacle, and that's the only way to be. So what we're struggling with as a society right now, and this whole battle of the sexes thing, if we can get off of the ludicrousness of even trying to battle like that and stop using opposition as how we define our interactions and go, wow, how do we complement one another? And if we move as men and women into embracing this larger understanding of these qualities that we all have, and and to divide into camps, like there's no human being, male, who is all yang.
Right.
And there's no woman that's all yin. All of nature reflects all of these qualities. Men tend toward this one side. Women tend to express these other sides. But, we're a mix. And, balance, wow. Nothing like being balanced, If we're all on the left side of the boat, we're screwed. The boat will flip over. If we're all on the right side, same thing. But if we're in both camps equally, and we address this consciously and awaken to these qualities that we express, these differences, and come to love them instead of judge them as bad and wrong or finger point the other guy. Oh, my God, you're so messy. You just completely, goddess chaos. And it's just like, and from the masculine point of view, that's incredibly ineffective and ineffectual. But without chaos is that state that precedes all creation.
Absolutely.
It's utterly necessary. So, it's back to the old love and marriage thing. You can't have one without the other. So.
Well, and it's interesting because as you were describing all those qualities, Cate, there's this place within. I was noticing how I was feeling as you were saying all those things. And there's a part of me that goes, yes, and those are complementary. And then there was this other part saying, yeah, but there's no way you could ever get those two to sit down and work together.
Yeah.
And we are in that place right now with what we're seeing with the government, the world economy, the medical systems, everything is in that place of we got either it needs to change the environment, things need to change from the old way, or we are screwed, or, and And the people that want to make a difference, like you said, get labeled. Oh, well, you're just this and you're just that, because there's so many people that are afraid to, well, I don't know, maybe I'm judging, but afraid to wake up and go, wow, this is no longer functioning. It's no longer a doable thing.
And I think what we're dealing with is real basic, Susan. We're dealing with fear, very natural, normal fear. Nobody likes to be vulnerable.
Oh, no.
Nobody wants to be vulnerable because that's scary. It means I'm at risk. It means I'm exposed. It means that I'm in this raw, vulnerable place where my emotions are in play, where I can get more deeply wounded. And we have lived in this temple of guardedness from, we're a young species, and, we're just crawling out from underneath the evolutionary rock of throwing sticks and stones at one another. Yes, we've advanced to nuclear warheads.
I know, I was going to say, I don't know if that's changed, Kate.
So we're still in this really reactive, frightened survival mode, where we haven't learned to set down our guard because we haven't learned yet that it's safe to do that. And I think we're just now entering the phase of our species evolution where, well, it's either change or die. We're either going to get vulnerable or we're going to off ourselves in the attempt to be guarded and self-protective.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes self-defeating after a certain point in time, and all systems change. Nations change, the fall of the Roman Empire. Everything that has outlived its usefulness, the nature of nature is change itself. And, we will either change willingly or we will get changed.
Right, that's right.
Yeah.
And
so,
it's interesting,
go
too,
ahead.
Kate, because so many people are because, like you said, they are afraid of being vulnerable. It's a fear factor. But what I'm also beginning to witness are those of us that are willing to, where life has just kicked you around enough where you go, wow, okay, something has to change. Mm-hmm. And what I'm noticing is, at least with a lot of my clients, when they can tap into that vulnerability, they're beginning to see that it's not as scary. That actually being in a more softened state, if you will, dealing with life in a more open-minded way, even though it feels scary, with practice, that vulnerability becomes their new way of living, which is awesome to witness, because then there's a whole bunch of new ideas and compromises or developments that can happen. Because there's no longer that rigidity that keeps multiplying from fear.
Yeah. And so much of, I think, what we're dealing with is about how we define the words we use. The very word vulnerable is related to female genitalia.
Right.
The vulva, that which can be penetrated. And so we flinch from that, and from a masculine paradigm, we've got a definition of vulnerability that is about weakness.
Right.
So if we start to reframe our definitions of words and go, well, what is vulnerability really? If I can go from the definition in my brain that vulnerability is a weakness to be avoided at all costs, then I move into what is vulnerability? Well, it means openness. It means unguardedness.
Yeah.
It means a softer place of receptivity. And it also means a place of inner self-trust. And none of that's available to us if we're, standing with armor on at the gate with sword in hand. And it gets exhausting standing at the gate with that heavy freaking armor on and a sword in hand. So when we start to redefine ourselves in a larger context and we start looking at these words in ways we think about ourselves and the feminine, relational, or here's another word, yielding.
Yielding. Surrender.
Surrender. For the masculine, that is horrific. The surrender means defeat. It's death.
Yeah, it's amazing how many people take it that way. I don't even think of it that way anymore.
No, but that's your reframing. Bless you. You're reframing that aspect. And so if we can start looking at surrender as what's the difference between spiritual surrender and sexual surrender? They both take you into bliss.
Right. That's a good question, actually, huh?
Really?
Really.
And so if we can stop the warring analogies where surrender is defeat and go, wow, surrender means I'm open to something new that will expand me and take me to a whole new level of operation that includes bliss and ecstasy and a moving into a more expansive, divine, all-inclusiveness that goes, wow, all of a sudden, all the danger and the red light, flashing and the alarms start to turn off because we've expanded into that beautiful place where we're more of ourselves, not less. And the more we are of ourselves, the less there is outside of us to guard against.
I love that you say that, Kate, because that's also something. I'm in my mid-50s now, and I have a lot of clients that are coming to me as they're turning 50, and they're leaving that place of self-definition by the job I do to this, and they're in that they're kind of, it's a quandary for them because it's like, well, so if I'm not defined by that, then who am I? Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Who are you? And how great is it that you get to have more than enough time in your life to explore that now? Having defined yourself in the way the outer world wants you to. Now you get to choose who you are and define yourself from your inner life.
Exactly. And, and it's fascinating. We get back, really, when you look at it, it's all about these polarities, all these masculine yang qualities, yin qualities. It's like masculine quality, guess what? Exterior-oriented.
Right.
Look at how a man is constructed physically. His whole genitalia is externally oriented. The feminine, the woman's genitalia is internal, and that reflects her whole nature. She's a very internal being. The dark, the process-oriented, and the darkness, and the wateriness of emotions. That's the realm of the great goddess. That's the realm of the feminine, and that's all interior stuff that happens in the dark. So when we're really exterior focused, and we're only limping along on one side of operating ourselves only through the masculine, it's all about having and doing.
Having and doing.
Having and doing. And the more we have and the more we have to do to have, and we just get into this incredible thing called the rat race, so that by the time we're 30, 40, 50, we are ready to explode because there's so much unexplored territory. We've never been given permission to really deal with the internal stuff because that's been put away by our society as something that should remain untouched and unexamined. But, we're reaching the point, as you've well pointed out, that that's changing on an individual and a social level.
Cate Montana, I am so enjoying this conversation. We're going to have to take a short break. I'm talking to Cate Montana, the author of Unearthing Venus, My Search for the Woman Within. You're listening to Living Your Inspired Life, and we will be right back. And welcome back to Living Your Inspired Life. I'm Susan Burrell. And if you've missed anything, go to livingyourinspiredlife.org. In fact, go and just peruse everything. Look around. We have an inspiration page. There's some really wonderful self-study things you can do at home to just kind of keep your focus steady on who you are and what it is you want in life. And our past shows are very informative, and several of them are workshops, so you can listen to a couple of shows and get a mini workshop without even leaving your living room. So that's livingyourinspiredlife.org. So right now we're talking to Cate Montana, the author of Unearthing Venus, My Search for the Woman Within, and it's a memoir on Cate's life. And I want to tell everybody, it's a really fun read. I just have so enjoyed reading it. So Kate, before break, we were beginning to talk about the goddess aspect, and I want to just give a quote from your book. And this is part of when you were going within to really explore that goddess aspect. And you said the impression I was getting was that the feminine was not only the unlimited capacity for the begetting of creation and the wellspring of life and nature. It was the active principle of continuous abundance, the unceasing outpouring of God source into expression. And I love that because that really, to me, at least that's why it hit me, because that to me describes the entire feminine aspect that we are moving into balance with. Hopefully everybody's aware that that's what we're doing. But that's our conversation right now.
Right. It's really stunning, Susan. Through this whole journey, I've come to my own personal theology, and actually, I probably should spell that with a THEA. Is that if we look at what we just talked about, the Taoist system of feminine and masculine as archetypes, qualitative characteristics that define the polarized expression of man and woman and everything else in this creation, yin and yang. And, so as above, so below, and I'm going to get a little esoteric here for just a second, but all of a sudden it occurred to me that if God is both that which is unseen and seen, that if we really want to track masculine yang qualities, which are abstract, mental, okay, those are qualitative masculines, then, well, doesn't that align with God as unseen, intangible, ineffable essence of something that we have that's unfathomable?
Right.
Okay.
I think
and
so.
Then we have that which is tangible and seen. So that is the feminine. It is that which is graspable, concrete, and tangible.
Really?
And so, yes.
I love that.
So what we have is, the two sides of the same coin. If all is one, which it is, hard to, you can't figure that out. It's got to be an inner experience. But, so we've got the intangible and we have the tangible. So the feminine is the outpouring into what is seeable, touchable, tangible, danceable, livable, expressible, understandable of the ineffable, unseen.
That's a lot of bowls there.
That is. The feminine is the face of God.
Yeah.
If it's got a face, it's feminine. And that means X-Men and guys and machine guns and Barbie dolls. Everything that is tangible in creation is the feminine. So this unlimited outpouring that you spoke about, that when you read that quote, is like that is the pouring from the unseen into the seen. It's unstoppable. It's outrageous. It's unlimited. It's forever. It's eternal and gushing. Unstoppable. And so then when we get frightened of that as little limited human creatures, we want to put all that in a box, because that kind of roaring, raging, unstoppable, kinetic uncontrollability is terrifying to little humans in very fragile, vulnerable things called bodies. And so that's one of the reasons we've shut the goddess energy away, because you've got this great tangible flood. We've got this thing called Mother Nature, which can pound us to a pulp in an instant. And it's just like, oh my God, the more we can shut that away, lock it in a box, try to control it, and figure it out and say we've got it figured out, the more in control and safe we feel. But it's an illusion.
A complete illusion.
A complete illusion. And even worse, we've truncated ourselves, we've crippled ourselves, we've castrated ourselves, we've cut ourselves off from the rest of what we are, out of fear. So we're moving into this place where we're putting our toes in the water.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting too, because when we were talking a little bit earlier, you were saying that we've been in survival mode. And even those of us that are in the Western culture, and well, what do you mean? I've got the house and the car and the kids in the yard or whatever. I'm the RV. I'm successful, but really we're still in survival mode. And when you were speaking about that, Cate, I kept seeing that Abraham Maslow pyramid, the hierarchy of needs. And I'm like, as you were saying, I was thinking, man, let's just get to the next level, which is about love, which is about esteeming and compassion and everything. And that must be where we're trying to reach, I hope.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, and the thing of it is this whole make wrong about the physical and having stuff and spiritual materialism, and well, you know, I think it's a necessary growing up phase of our evolution.
Yeah.
We've got to move to this place of however we get to our abundance and get to have the experience of feeling comfortable with a beautiful roof over our heads and food in our bellies 24/7. It's like, it's not until we can get to that place of physical safety that we dare to start addressing the more ephemeral existential aspects of our being. You know, the starving person is not really going to give much of a hoot about how many angels can dance on the head of a pin and their existential condition is souls.
That's right.
They just want food. So what a blessing. We've brought ourselves to this incredibly abundant place physically. So now the stage is set where we're evolution-wise, we're prepared to start looking at the bigger picture from a really comfortable sofa position.
And you did not stay on your sofa. You did some trekking.
I have.
to not just inward trekking, but trekking to a bunch of different places to find your answer in a way.
Yeah.
So I want you to. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I want you to share the story that you write about in your book, and it's a friend of yours, or somebody that you met, who told you about this shaman he brought to New York.
Mm-hmm.
And the shaman has never been out of his small tribal village, and comes to New York, and he gets out of a taxi and hugs a building.
Yes.
Now, why was that?
Because he understood, well, he wanted to. I mean, wow, imagine seeing a skyscraper for the first time this year from the Amazon.
Yeah.
But he also understood that everything in mass, everything that is tangible, has a consciousness, because it's part of it's the visible side of the unseen. And so it carries all this information in the unseen with it. And so he got down and knelt beside the skyscraper and put his head to it and communed with the skyscraper and learned its intelligence, learned its consciousness. And he came away just beaming from ear to ear, going, wow, what a great consciousness that building has. And we don't think in terms of the unseen. We go to church on Sunday, we talk about the S word, we talk about spirit, but then we turn around and live lives that are so incredibly clinging to the concrete that we don't even give credibility to this unseen aspect, even though we have words for it in church, and it's really quite amusing. But that
the
was
words
really,
for some people, those words describe something that is never going to be embodied.
Right, because we've done this incredible separation dance with most religions, at least Western religions. We have completely compartmentalized and put spirit in one camp and physicality in another camp.
Yeah.
And we've made one good and we've made one bad. We have elevated spirit above flesh. We have completely carved the two in half. We have taken a unified expression called creation and divvied it up into camps. It's a very dividing mind, structured, masculine way of dealing with things.
Wait, isn't there some war strategy from years ago about divide and therefore you
divide
can
and conquer?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And once you've taken the spirit out of flesh, then you're at war with yourself. You are a house divided. And and all of the, bless their heart, all the tradition of all the Abrahamic religions, whether it's Islam or Judaism or fundamentalist Christianity, is still pitting spirit and flesh against one another. And yet we are both. And so we're constantly at war with ourselves, tearing ourselves apart. Is there any wonder why we turn more and more consistently to physical answers for things, to just kind of like drink and drown and drug ourselves into a numb state where we don't have to feel this terrible pain of unnecessarily ripping ourselves apart and seeing ourselves as divided.
And what I've always felt and believed, and there's definite research out there and different people like you and that have written books about this, that this is not there. I was speaking to a group this week. This is not this feeling of separation like that and ripping ourselves apart. When I was younger, I thought it was just me. You know, there's something wrong with me. I feel abandoned, or I feel alone, and it must just be me. But this is a cultural experience of separation that has been going on for over 2,000 years, so that we don't even know that we are feeling abandoned and separate and alone, and we don't feel good enough. It's been built into us from not to fault anybody, but it was so that our grandparents had this, our great grandparents had this, and it's not any one family it got passed down to. It's all of us in the Western culture.
Absolutely.
Which is really kind of, I mean, it's refreshing to wake up and go, oh, it's not just me being the odd man out or the weird person, but it's also very important to realize this is what's been done. And that's why when a good thing is about to happen to me and I want to pull up short and go, wait a minute, I can't have that. And that's why we've been so attracted in the last couple of decades to all this, think and grow rich kind of stuff.
Right. We have this really low self-opinion of ourselves because we've been taught for thousands of years that we are physical, messy, unworthy creatures that are completely separate from God.
Right, and we're never going to be good enough.
No, we're never going to be good enough, and that we certainly aren't divine. And yet, if you take a look at quantum physics, which shows that everything is one thing, and that the whole of creation is actually subtle information, and that there really isn't anything tangible. It's just like, oh, well, what do I do with that?
Right.
And so, we're doing this baby step. I mean, that's a big responsibility to start, taking God and like Santa out of the Santa Claus slot and go, oh my God, well, if God is inside me, and I have to start taking responsibility. And yet if we don't start growing up and taking responsibility for what we're doing in this world, then we are doomed to go right over the cliff. And accepting that the story, that the fate that is unfolding for us has always been written and always was, and that we have no choice in the matter.
Right.
And it's just like, oh my goodness gracious, how did we... I mean, that's a really kind of a safe place to try to be for a while. I mean, what little child ever will take responsibility, especially if it looks like it's something that, they've messed up.
Right.
It's going to be, well, no, not me. I didn't do that. I'm just here for the ride. And so, we're getting to this place that if we keep up with that divided, God is out there and responsibility is out there, and I'm just along for the ride. If that can only take us so far.
Well, it's taken us to now, and now is not, it's not moving in a positive direction, people.
Well, and yet it really is, because...
Okay, good.
If there's... I couldn't leave it there. Yeah, my God, Susan, 30 years ago, there was no such really word as ecology even.
That's
and
right.
Nobody would be talking about consciousness, and nobody would be talking about economic triple bottom lines, where, they teach at Harvard now, the triple bottom line, which is people, planet, and profit, in that order. And so we really are beginning to wake up and become accountable for ourselves. We really are growing up. And, yeah, I worked for a while for the film What the Bleep Do We Know, and I came out of kind of an isolated spiritual community where I thought, oh, my God, the whole world is going to hell in a handbasket, and there's nothing I can do about it, and oh, my God, we're not going to wake up in time. And all of a sudden, almost overnight, I was catapulted into a spiritual arena where I was in contact with thousands of organizations and thousands of people globally who are enormously awake, who are taking responsibility, and who are, champing at the bit to... to step into a place of responsibility and accountability, because they see the importance of it and how exciting to be responsible, how exciting to be in college instead of kindergarten.
Yeah, and it's so funny as you're talking about this, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we are in the adolescent stage, moving into young adulthood. How cool!
Absolutely.
Where we get to see we're at choice.
Yes,
I have a young adult. He's 20. He just came home last night for a hot second, and the thing that he's enjoying most, I can tell, is he gets to have choice about everything he's doing right now. Even when he doesn't know who he wants to be or what he wants to do, which I keep telling him, that's fine, don't worry, you'll figure it out. But
Right.
what he's loving is he gets to have choice. There's nobody telling him what to do.
Yeah, it's an incredibly liberating adult feeling. And you mentioned Abraham Maslow before. So, if you look at humanity and species on an evolutionary ride, we are stepping into bigger and bigger footprints with every stride. And we're learning more and more about our world, both inner and outer. And, one of these days it's going to catch up to us that there really isn't a dividing point between inner and outer, that it's all one.
Yeah.
And wow, human potential. We don't know. We don't even know what the capacity of the human brain is. And where we can actually get to in consciousness and in our understanding about ourselves, life, God, the universe, and whatever. So it's incredibly exciting times that we live in if we can just kind of get out of this dualistic dance that we've been so set on, that we have circumscribed ourselves in camps of sexuality and right and wrong and up and down and good and bad, and we're just starting to loosen the tethers to expand. I mean, my God, I know, I don't know about you, but come on, I lived in the New Age community for 30 years, and everybody wants to be God, and everyone wants to have out-of-body experiences, and everybody wants to be enlightened. What a wake-up call to realize that I didn't even know what the hell being a woman meant.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, that's pretty, there's the fundamental right there.
Yeah. That was like, let's get back to brass tacks here. And I was really horrified to realize that so much of my own New Age orientation of spirituality, which was very much focused on, the light and love and crystals and out there and out-of-body experience and getting out there to God, was so much an extension of my old Christian upbringing. It was just mind-boggling when I saw it. It's like, oh my God, this is just a continuation of dividing camps between spirit's the good thing, but the flesh is what's, is the ball and chain keeping me from spirit.
Right.
And I was really shocked to find that so much of what I was doing was just an extension of what I'd been doing. So to turn around at age 60 and start going, well, you know what? I'm not going to try to keep getting out of my body and getting out there to God. God is within me. And I'm turning around at 60 and looking within. But didn't Jesus say that? The kingdom of heaven is within. Duh. So it's just like, oh, okay, I'm going to go into that messy, unexplored territory called my physical body, my emotions, which are chemically based, and all this other messy, dark stuff that I've been trying to avoid taking responsibility for and really examining and finding out about, which is also called me, and start embracing that, which is where my whole journey has been taking me ever since I published Unearthing Venus, ever since it was published, and start turning around and looking into the dark. I mean, I was at a church recently giving a talk, and the title of my talk was "Going into the Dark," and everybody was kind of titillated by that, going, "Ooh, this is so scary." But we need to start. We have to stop demonizing the dark. There is no dark without light, and no light without dark.
Yin yang.
Yin yang.
It's interesting because I think I found in my personal exploration, that going into those shadow parts and that dark part is exactly what you've been talking about today. What our discussion has been is then you can find the real parts of yourself that you've disenfranchised, that are at the other side of the polarity, and you keep hoping they'll just drop off the edge of the world anyway. But to find those parts and then really kind of become at peace with that, or at one with that, attuned to that, is it's pretty amazing, and it is scary. It is scary for people.
Yeah, because we've demonized so much out of misunderstanding and ignorance. We've had so much superstition and so much. And we've been the masculine is very law oriented. It's back to structure again. Mm-hmm. It is rule bound. That's how the masculine operates, and the feminine is just a no holds barred. Anything goes. And so we're coming to this beautiful point of balance in between. But rules are, we give little children rules for their own good and safety. But just like your son coming home, he's excited because now, so many of the rules are no longer there. He's old enough to be self-managing.
Yes.
Self-moderating. And
Yes.
he's old enough to make wiser choices. And then it's about personal experience, taking him to wherever he can go.
And it's his journey. See, and that's the other piece, is that we are all on our own journey.
Mm-hmm.
That that other people will want to tell you, well, this is how you should do it. Well,
Right.
if you don't do this, then you're just in big trouble. All of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I for one constantly have to remind myself, I this is my path. It's my journey. It is okay that I'm doing it the way I'm choosing to do it. It's not. Kate, I just went on a major detox and found out that I'm like allergic to everything, and pretty much who isn't. And I was sharing that with my parents, and it was amazing to listen to how afraid they got. Well, then what can you eat? Oh, there's tons of stuff I can eat, but then you can't have peanut butter. Well, what's wrong with you? It was very interesting because it plugged in their fear, and I had to keep telling myself, this is my journey, and I am okay with my journey. I love my journey right now, which is the truth.
Right. Yeah. I mean, wow. I mean, we are so naturally afraid. Fear is such a default position in us. But, that goes back to caveman days where you step out of the cave and who knows, the saber-toothed tiger is going to get you, and God only knows what else. And we're still in that fight-or-flight mode, but now we're in fight-or-flight mode over rules and over internet website, crashes. And so we're in this real tense place all the time.
Yeah.
And that's what we are moving beyond. This bound up place inside of us that is so regulated, and go, oh my God, it's safe to be unregulated and just be and explore and discover what this world is and who I am and who I am in it, and trust myself. The last freaking thing we do is trust ourselves.
Oh, that's another big fear that we've been forced. The last several centuries, it's been thrust upon us, is to be afraid of trusting whatever that intuitive power is within you, that divine urge that's saying, yes, this is who you are.
Yeah,
be afraid of it.
Exactly, but if you're taught that that's demonic, and that's the devil talking to you, and that all that's divine is outside of you, how in God's name can you ever trust that inner voice? That inner intuition, that beautiful inner prompting and unfolding.
God, look at that. You're being taught that there's only that people outside of you know better than you will ever know.
Mm-hmm.
That
right.
is just wrong, in my opinion.
Well, that's the difference between belief and knowing.
Yeah.
Carl Jung, at the end of his life, somebody asked him, so do you believe in God? Because Carl Jung had a lot to say about God as an archetype,
Mm-hmm.
and the symbolic patterns that reflecting us in what we are. And he just smiled and he said, I don't believe in God, I know. And, and from a more religious perspective, that's blasphemous. What do you mean you know? Who are you to know?
Well, isn't there something in that book called the Bible where it says, be still and know?
Yes. Isn't there something like that?
Isn't there something like that? And then they want to wag their fingers at you. Really? Really?
Right. And so, moving away from rule and law and Bibles and Torahs and Korans and moving into that bigger law called self, and knowing that we can trust that, and that we are, there have been a lot of studies who have been done recently on children and childhood psychological development, and children are evidence a high level of moral understanding at a very young age. It's like, the more I travel, and I've traveled all over the world and lived in little villages in South America, you name it, and I've always been so impressed by the quality and the kindness of, by far and away, the majority of people. We are decent in our heart of hearts, but we've been sold a bill of goods, and we're still getting sold a bill of goods that we are evil creatures, and it's not true.
It's not true.
I suddenly remembered I was on air.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But off air, we can share a few choice words. Cate Montana, I want to share another quote from your book that is that I got toward the end of it that was coming out of your personal discovery of the connection to God or the goddess within, and you said that you heard this voice within saying, "Let the beauty of who you are draw the things that are equal to you into your life. You need not chase anything, especially me." And that's profound because I think there is a place in our as we get older where people realize, wow, I've been so busy getting that I don't necessarily need to do that anymore. I don't need to chase after the definition of self. I don't need to chase after the abundant something thing that I want and just be with me, and it's all right there.
I'm very much in it. It's just interesting that's at the end of the book, towards the end, and in this whole last couple of years since I finished writing the book, it's been a journey living up to what I wrote.
Oh gosh, okay, that's a good note to self right there. Don't write it down.
Don't write it down, or honey, you're gonna be pressed to live it. So, I found that I was talking about trusting these dark places, trusting the emotions, trusting life itself, trusting life in the body, trusting the physical. And so I ended the book, with that. And so then now I've had the opportunity the last couple of years to actually embrace living that. And it's really scary because the world is the last place we've been taught to trust. Even though we live mass to mass, we slave by the sweat of our brow and make things happen. And this ideal about letting life flow and bring you to the places and the experiences you need next is it's nice, but it's also a philosophy until you start letting go enough to actually let life lead. Same things, let God let go.
Right.
And it was really easy for me to. No, that's a lie. It was easy for me to think, let God let go. I wasn't any better at letting God do it than I am at letting life do it. And now that I've understood that God and life are the same thing, but I'm slowly getting forced into that dance. I'm at a point where I can't do anything else because I've done it the old way.
And now you have to do it the way you've uncovered it.
Now I have to do it the way that life wants it. Life is a dance.
Oh, Cate, I love this. We are at the end of our time together, and I feel like we could talk more. So when your next book comes out, you got to come back, or even if you don't, if just want to come and chat on air, we'll do it.
I would love it, Susan.
I've been talking to Cate Montana. The book is Unearthing Venus, My Search for the Woman Within. Get it. It's a wonderful, wonderful read. And with all of that said, I'm just going to say, and so it is, namaste.